In the words of Anakin Skywalker, this is where the fun begins. Because this album right here, like a lot of my music still holds a very special place in my heart. I think all of my music always will, right? But as an artist, not just as a rapper, as an artist in any field, right? You will make a lot of bad things. And I feel like moments come where we try to judge ourselves and it never really goes well. Like even I'm guilty of it. Like I'm very critical of myself, but I feel like it's done in a very healthy way. Um, I'm not critical of myself and then use that as an excuse or a reason to stop. Um, I'm critical of myself afterwards. I'm never critical of myself during, because I don't want to inhibit my artistic process. When you do create things, you know, you're going to have bad things that you create. That's just a natural part of creation for anybody in any field, really. I'm specifically talking about artists, whether that be, painting, drawing, murals, sculpting, music, whatever it may be, acting. You're going to make some bad art. And eventually, eventually, you're going to make some very beautiful art. So, my journey, because I can only speak for me on this part, my journey, I feel like the majority of the beginning of my journey, where I thought that all of my success would come from, was when I made all of my bad art. Um, Bad because I'm being critical, not bad because I think that you know, there's nothing worse than what I created, but just being honest about the quality of it at the time. That was when I made a lot of my bad work. And now I can look back at that and go, oh, yeah, I had to get a lot of that out of the way so that I could do what I'm doing now. And that's where St. John's Church Road comes in. Because around this time, like I mentioned, my mindset's changing. I'm trying to be better. I'm trying to be more present. I'm trying to be happier. Um, I wanted to dedicate an album to where all of this really began. 1033 is obviously um, home. St. John's Church Road is also home. And I wanted to encapsulate that moment. I definitely went back and forth a little bit about if I wanted to name it just SJCR or if I wanted to name it something else, but I was like, no, I want to name it St. John's Church Road. And I want the cover to be my grandfather's house. Um, the red, the red just felt when I was, editing, because originally it was just the actual picture, everything was green, the scenery and everything. But I was like, no, this it doesn't feel right. So I just, I started playing around with it and I landed on the red filter for it. And I was just like, no, this feels like the way I'm hearing this album. Like when I play this album, this is how I'm visualizing home. And my grandfather's house was the first house that I was brought back to after I was born. Um, and then it's also the house that I've been blessed enough to be able to work out of, to build 1033, to record all of the music that I've recorded, everything that I've done for, at this point, at least the last maybe 8 or so years has been done within my grandfather's house. Um, and I really wanted an album that when I look back, when I'm an old man and, I have grandkids, if I'm blessed enough, And they see this, they'll this will be a little piece of history, not just for me, but for them, for the area, and it'll be, an immortalized moment. And I also used my parents' house on some of the artwork, where I think it was my parents' house is on the back cover, part of my parents' house, and my grandfather's house is the front cover with my dad's. I don't know if it's a '60s bug. I think it's a '60s bug, maybe a '70s bug. It's currently being what is the word for it? He's getting it fixed up. I can't think of the actual word for it right now. But he's getting it fixed up. And I was like, yeah, this is where I made this album. This is where everything is really gonna, come to fruition. It all started here, it's gonna blow up from here. And I just wanted to really take that time and just be thankful for a lot of the stuff that was going on in my life around that time and that I had been blessed to see. Even if I never made it to where I thought I would, I was just so grateful. And I look at the track list, because this is one of those albums where I wrote it all by hand. I didn't type out this album. I wrote them all in my notebook. Um, Ever since my granddad passed away, I've always had his pen, and I've used it to write songs. I've used it to write books, the drafts of books anyway. And I always use it. Anytime I wrote something down physically for my art, I was using my grandfather's pen. And this one, it really felt like a really big moment to do that, because I was, remembering him, remembering my grandmother, um, paying respects, and just being grateful for my family and everything like that. So, and really just taking a trip down memory lane. And I look at the track list and I look at like church service, because at that time I was having doubts with my church, not doubts with God, but specifically with my church. And we had some disagreements with how things were done during COVID time. And I hadn't went back since. I still haven't been back to those specific churches um, because of those disagreements. And I used to love playing drums at the churches. I did it since I was 10 years old. But unfortunately, you grow as a person and you start to see things for what they are. And you realize, oh, some things you just, from a moral standpoint, you just can't agree with. And, that song was addressing that. Like, even if I never go back, I know this church was still home at one point. And, you know, my grandparents are buried out there. Aunts, uncles, family. Like this church shares the name with the road. I grew up here, yada yada yada. So I wanted to still pay my respects, because it wasn't a disrespectful thing to the church. It was more the people in the church and their decision making for them to be leaders um, between the two churches that I was going to. So moving beyond that, like just every song I wanted to feel honest, and I wanted to put my best foot forward lyrically, even if it wasn't like a personal anecdote and story that I was telling. If I was just, writing and making good lyrics and telling like I guess you would call them kind of fables, I guess. If I was making, stories like that, I still wanted my lyricism to be on point, and I wanted everything to be, the best that I could present at that moment in time. And I just felt like every song captured that and captured its own personal moment from my life. And, you get through the songs and you get towards like the middle of the album and you get to Legacy. And that was a song dedicated to my dad. It was his 50th birthday. Um, I'm pretty sure I released this album on his 50th birthday. And, I had my mom and my sisters come in and, give birthday messages in the song. And that's when it was really like, yeah, man, like you get so much more out of this when you do stuff from a personal place and you really let go of all the social media following and wanting to be famous and this, that, and the other. I was in such a happy place. Um, I was still teaching, obviously, and I remember I had a conversation with one of my students in there, and I was like, what do you think? I let them listen to it. The older kids, I let them listen to it because they could understand some of the themes a bit more. And they were like, oh yeah, Mr. Cameron, this is nice. This one doesn't suck. And I was like, oh well, thanks. I appreciate your honesty. And they were like, oh yeah, for sure, no problem, bro. They're funny, but yeah, I love this album so much. And I remember I believed in it so much. I got CDs pressed, and I had those physical copies, and I carried them. I still do. I carry physical copies in the trunk of a few projects, but specifically this one. And I just, I had so much faith that this would be like a really big one to put me into a different stratosphere of recognition when it came to socials. But then I had to check myself and go, no, this isn't why you did that. You did this as a personal project, and even if it doesn't do any of that, it did what it did what it needed to do, what you set out for it to do. Because there's songs like 88 Cadillac. My granddad used to have a 1988 blue candy painted Cadillac, and I remember sitting in that car, going places with him. My mom has shown me pictures of me in the car, and I always thought after he passed away that I would keep that car, but unfortunately, it got sold off. It is what it is. Maybe in the future I'll get one. Maybe I'll be blessed enough to do that. But yeah, man, it was songs like that where I put myself in the position of being a child. And I remember Pop, when he was listening to it for the first time, he was like, yeah, I didn't really get that song at first until I started listening after it got going. And I was like, oh, he's rapping from the perspective of being a child during this song. And yeah, man, it was refreshing making all those songs. Like, yeah, some of them were heavy for me to make. Some of them were about breakups and stuff, like Topsail Nights. Topsail Nights was an R&B song. Maybe it might be, I could have done, better with my vocal performance if I'm looking back on it now. But at the time I felt like, this is the best I can do. And it's still a good song. And it captures how I feel so much. So Topsail Nights is actually somewhat of a follow-up to the song from London Season when I did Beachside. And, it's just your usual breakup song. I wasn't going through a breakup then, but I was speaking about love and loss just from a general perspective, but I tried to make it seem more personal because I haven't been in a relationship in a while. I wasn't in a relationship when I made that song, but I still had personal experiences to draw off of when I made that song. And then we get to what is probably one of my most favorite songs I've ever done, which is Die Alone. And that one did do pretty well on social media and streaming services and stuff. People gravitated towards that one pretty well. But I was dealing with the feelings of fear of potentially, not being able to find a wife or not being able to have kids and seeing life pass by. And I've just been putting all this time into trying to be successful in music and, the genuine fear of dying alone. And there were two versions of the song I wrote initially, where one version was talking about not wanting to die alone. And then the other one where the hook would switch towards the end and it would switch to I'm not gonna die alone. And then I was like, no, I feel like keeping it focused on the fear made it a better song and made it a more relatable song that I'm sure a lot of people were able to kind of understand where I was coming from because they may also share that same fear, both men and women alike. So it was just such a honest song back then. I even addressed like feeling like I let my mom down because she always wanted grandkids. And, thankfully, My sister has had a son, and at the time of me recording this, he's almost 9 months old. So I'm so glad that she, is healthy and young enough to enjoy having her first grandchild. And a little bit of that pressure of having to have the first child is off of my shoulders. But I also feel like I put that pressure there based off of what everyone was saying around me when I was a kid. So in reality, there was no pressure. Um, but life happens like that sometimes. But yeah, it just was such a strong song for me. I even called in Pop and Diero again to help me shoot a video for it, and the video turned out great. We got some behind the scenes footage of us shooting the video. We shot the actual video. I can always tell how nervous I am when I'm on camera. It's not something I enjoy, but I do try my best now to, step in front of the camera sometimes, even if it's just something like my recent journal entry videos where I'm not looking at the camera and I'm just writing in my journal. That still, to me, captures what I'm wanting you to understand for the video. Like, you're watching me write the song out as you're listening to the song. So stuff like that, where I had to kind of figure out how I wanted to do it outside of a traditional video. But the Die Alone video, I put it in Darion's hands and I said, hey man, I trust what you're gonna do with directing me. And I trust, like, I had a few ideas myself, but I trusted his decision making to, make sure stuff came out well. So I think the final song, it's not the final song on the album, but it's the final song that I did a video for, I believe, was Fatigue Freestyle. And that's another song where I was just being very vulnerable and honest about feeling tired again. And despite doing my best efforts with trying to maintain, being happy and being positive and stuff, obviously I'm human and, emotions can fluctuate. Circumstances change, but I was still trying my best to do so, to do so. I was just getting really tired. And I feel like that had begun to show in my personal life. But I felt like the best way for me to express that was to just be honest and, write the song about it. Fatigue Freestyle actually started out as a beat that I produced and I wrote the song for that. But then I transitioned a bit and I picked out another beat from a different producer and went with that, because at the time I was still a little hesitant about my own production. I would add a few notes here and there, like extra production, but I wouldn't commit to producing the whole thing myself. Also, shout out to Maria, my very language driven friend. She knows so many languages, or even if she doesn't know them, she can speak them. She's a translator. So I'm going to say she knows all these languages. I don't know. I think it's like 4 or 5 different languages. So when I need something said in, Romanian or French or something like that, she always helped me out and she would translate what I was saying and give me a nice little vocal clip. So that vocal clip at the beginning of Fatigue Freestyle is actually Maria. I would have to look up what I asked her to say because I wrote it in the lyrics, but just off the top of my head, I don't remember what it actually translates to. But it is important to the start of the song. Unfortunately, I just, there's so many songs in my head at any given point in time that some of the information I do begin to forget here and there if I don't hear it regularly. But yeah, overall, St. John's is, in my opinion, my first classic album and maybe one of my best albums of all time. When all of this is said and done, I think it will still be, maybe top 5, top 10, depending on how many projects I do. I think I already have more than 50 albums, but still, when it's all said and done, whatever age I am, where I make my last project and I'm like 110 years old and I'm still trying to rap, I still think St. John's will be in the upper echelon of my releases. I do recall Pop and I sitting in the car. I think we were coming from his house and we were headed to the studio, or we were about to head back to his house. I think we were coming to the studio from his house. And we just listened to the album start to finish. And I remember him just, shaking his head going, yeah, I think you got one. I think you did it. Because he had already given me, higher praise for Bloom, but said throwing that last song on the end kind of messed me up. But when he listened to St. John's, he, it was nothing but praise. And that's when he, gave me the classic stamp there. And obviously I understand you can't just throw that word around in hip hop, and, there's certain metrics that it has to adhere to for the mainstream. But for me, the classics are the ones that stand the test of time and I can go back to, and they still hold up very well. So I think with St. John's, that's when I got my first.
Look, I got this voice in my head. I need to get out of bed. Don't feel like checking my phone. I just ignore it instead. It's telling me get up and go. Said I should be focusing more. It knows all my thoughts and how I've been combating. I know it's still trying me though. Like, hey Camp, gon' try this pill. It might change how you feel. Just let me take control. You think we got a deal? Nah, I just been taking my time. If it happens, it happens, but there ain't no need for me to be wasting my prime. It want me committing the crimes to please the ones that want me to fail. I plan on longevity, even if solo, I'm hoping you wishing me well. I never kiss and tell, the voice just want me to take to the streets. I just been working my pace, I'm finally getting a moment of peace. I'm finally getting to sleep without the thoughts I used to have. Some of the reason is cause I've been overexerting when I'm in the lab. Guess it's no reason to lie, cause I'm only gonna lie to myself. Can't be afraid to cry when it's me against myself. I don't wanna feel like this, oh no. I don't wanna go through this, oh no. I just wanna get this voice out of my head. Don't got a cure for this, oh no. It's strong but I must resist, oh no. It says I walk this road alone until I'm dead. You gon' die, 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 you gonna die alone. You gon' die, 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 you gonna die alone. Yeah, I know my mama wants some grands, but it's out of her hands. Started feeling kinda guilty, but she understands that my mind ain't what it used to be. Who gon' come through for me? Blaming my anxiety, cause I know what it do to me. It's telling me things that I really don't wanna hear. Wish I could silence the noise, but sadly it's here until I can stop living in fear. Used to be chasing the joy, now I'm becoming somebody I don't wanna know. I got an empty home, maybe it's true, I'm really gon' die alone. I refuse to give into this nuisance. This my life, I'm done making excuses. I'm just a piece of things my mind produces. I won't let it choose this. I refuse to give into this nuisance. This my life, I'm done making excuses. I'm just a piece of things my mind produces. I won't let it choose this. I don't wanna feel like this, oh no. I don't wanna go through this, oh no. I just wanna get this voice out of my head. Don't got a cure for this, oh no. It's strong but I must resist, oh no. It says I walk this road alone until I'm dead. You gon' die, 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 you gonna die alone. You gon' die, 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 you gonna die alone.